everyone, welcome back to Education Academy. It's Poojitha here, and today we're going to be continuing reading Sideways Stories from Wayside School by Louis Satcher, illustrated by Adam Macaulay. Last time we read until Sherry. Today we're going to be reading chapter 5 and 6. Chapter 5, Todd. All of the children in Miss Jules' class, except Todd, were talking and carrying on. Todd was thinking. Todd always thought before he spoke. When he got an idea, his eyes lit up. Todd finished thinking and he began to speak. But before he said 2 words, Miss Jules called him. "Todd," she said, "you know better than to talk in class. You must learn to work quietly, like the other children." She wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Discipline kind of means that you got in trouble. I'm writing your name on the blackboard. It's kind of like warnings in this class. Todd looked around in amazement. All of the children who had been talking and screaming and fighting only seconds earlier were quietly working in their workbooks. Todd scratched his head. Something fishy. A children was given 3 chances in Miss Jules' class. The first time he did something wrong, Miss Jules wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The second time he did something wrong, she put a check on his name. And the third time he did something wrong, she circled his name. Todd reached into his desk and pulled out his workbook. He had only just started on it when he felt someone tap on his shoulder. It was Joy. "What page are you on?" Joy asked. "Page 4, Todd whispered. "I'm on page 11, said Joy. Todd didn't say anything. He didn't want to get into trouble. He just went back to work. 5 minutes later, Joy tapped him again. Todd ignored her, so John poked him in the back with her pencil. Todd pretended he didn't notice. Joy got up from her seat and sharpened her pencil. She came back and poked it on Todd's back. "What page are you on?" she asked. "Page 5, Todd answered. "Boy, are you dumb," said Joy. "I'm on page 29. "It isn't a race," Todd whispered. 5 minutes later, Joy pulled Todd's hair and didn't let go until he turned around. "What page are you on?" she demanded. "Page 6, Todd answered as quietly as he could. "I'm on page 200, Joy shouted. Todd was very angry. "Will you please let me do my work and stop bothering me?" Miss Jules heard him. "Todd, what did I say about talking in class?" Todd scratched his head. But I think Joy is more of a fast worker. Miss Jules put a check next to Todd's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Todd really tried to be good. He knew that if he talked one more time, Miss Jules would circle his name. Then he'd have to go home early at 12 o'clock on the kindergarten bus, just as he had the day before and the day before that. In fact, there hadn't been a day since Miss Jules took over the class that she didn't send Todd home early. She said she did it for his own good. The other children went home at 2 o'clock. Todd wasn't really bad. He just always got caught. He really wanted to find out what the class did from 12 to 2. But it didn't look as though this was going to be his day. This is going to be his day. It was only 10:30. And as he had 2 strikes against him, he sealed his lips and went back to work. There was a knock on the door. Miss Jules opened it. 2 men stepped in wearing masks and holding guns. "Give us all your money," they demanded. "All I have is a nickel," said Miss Jules. "I have a dime," said Maricia. "I have 13 cents, said Leslie. "I have 4 cents, said Damon. "What kind of bank is this?" asked one of the robbers. It's not a bank, it's a school," said Todd. Can't you read? No, said the robbers. Neither can I, said Todd. Do you mean we walked all the way up 30 flights of stairs for nothing? Asked the robber. Don't you have anything valuable? Todd's eyes lit up. We sure do, he said. We have knowledge. He grabbed Joy's workbook and gave it to the robbers. Knowledge is much more valuable than money. Thanks, kid, said one of the robbers. Maybe I'll give up being a criminal and become a scientist, said the other. They left the room without hurting anybody. But I don't have a workbook, complained Joy. Miss Jules gave her a new one. Joy had to start all the way at the beginning. Hey, Joy, what page are you on? Asked Todd. Page 1, Joy sighed. I'm on page 8, laughed Todd triumphantly. Miss Jules heard him. She circled his name. Todd had 3 strikes against him. At 12 o'clock, he left the room to go home early on the kindergarten bus. But this time when he left, he was like a star baseball player leaving the field. All the children stood up, clapped their hands, and whistled. Todd scratched his head. That was funny. So, I think Todd had a plan of letting Joy not disturb him anymore. Okay, let's read chapter 6. Chapter 6, BB. Looks like she's doing some paperwork here, and I think someone is handing her more. And I think this clock represents something. BB was a girl with short brown hair, a little BB nose, totally tiny toes, and big brown eyes. Her full name was BB Gunn. She was the fastest drawer in Miss Jules' class. She could draw a cat in less than 45 seconds, a dog in less than 30, and a flower in less than 8 seconds. But of course, BB never drew just one dog, or just one cat, or just one flower. Art was from 12:30 to 1:30. Why in that time she could draw 50 cats, 100 flowers, 20 dogs, and several eggs or watermelons. It took her the same amount of time to draw a watermelon as an egg. I think she's a really fast worker, too, just like Joy. Calvin sat next to BB, so I think this person who's handing her papers is Calvin. He didn't think he was very good at art. Why, it took him the whole period just to draw one airplane. So instead, he just helped BB. He was BB's assistant. As soon as BB would finish one masterpiece, Calvin would take it from her and set down a clean sheet of paper. Whenever her crayon ran low, Calvin was ready with a new crayon. That way, BB didn't have to waste any time, and in return, BB would draw 5 or 6 airplanes for Calvin. So I think it's like a fair amount. It was 12:30. Time for art. BB was ready. On her desk was a sheet of yellow construction paper. In her hand was a green crayon. Calvin was ready. He held a stack of paper and a box of crayons. Ready, BB? Said Calvin. Ready, Calvin, said BB. So I think they're doing some teamwork here. Okay, said Miss Jules. Time for art. She said she had hardly finished her sentence when BB had already drawn a picture of a leaf. Calvin took it from her and put another piece of paper down. Red, called BB. Calvin handed BB a red crayon. Blue, called BB. He gave her a blue crayon. They were quite a pair. Their team was remarkable. BB drew pictures as fast as Calvin could pick up the old paper and set down the new. A fish, an apple, 3 cherries, bing, bing, bing. At 1:30, Miss Jules announced, Okay, class, art is over. BB dropped her crayon and fell over on her desk. Calvin sighed and leaned back in her chair. He could hardly move. They had broken into their old record. BB had drawn 378 pictures. They lay in a pile on Calvin's desk. Miss Jules walked by. Calvin, did you draw all of these pictures? Calvin laughed. No, I can't draw. Bibi drew all of them. Bibi drew them all. Well then, what did you draw? Asked Miss Jules. I didn't draw anything, said Calvin. Why not? Don't you like art? Asked Miss Jules. I love art. That's why I didn't draw anything. Miss Jules didn't understand. Miss Jules did not understand. It would have taken me the whole period just to draw one picture, said Calvin, and Bibi would only have been able to draw 100 pictures. But with the two of us working, she was able to draw 378 pictures. That's a lot more art. Bibi and Calvin shook hands. No, said Miss Jules. That isn't how you measure art. It isn't how many pictures you have, but how the pictures are. Why, a person could spend his whole life just drawing one picture of a cat. In that time, I'm sure Bibi could draw 1,000,000 cats. 2,000,000, said Bibi. Miss Jules continued, but if that one picture is better than each of Bibi's 2,000,000, then that person has produced more art than Bibi. Bibi looked as if she was going to cry. She picked up all the pictures from Calvin's desk and threw them in the garbage. Then she ran from the room. I thought her pictures were good, said Calvin. I think she wasted a lot of time. He reached into the garbage pail and took out a crumpled up picture of an airplane. Bibi walked outside into the playground. Louis, the yard teacher, spotted her. Where are you going? He asked. I'm going home to draw a picture of a cat, said Bibi. Will you bring it to school and show me tomorrow? Louis asked. Tomorrow? Laughed Bibi. By tomorrow, Dad'll be finished with one whisker. Okay, think we finished 2 chapters? I'm being generous today. I'm going to give you one more chapter because I think these chapters are fun. Chapter 7, Calvin. Calvin doesn't look good there. Looks so weak, and I think this represents something. I don't see anything on it, but I see some dotted lines. I think this is a piece of paper. I think he's walking down 30 flights. Calvin. Calvin had a big, round face. Calvin, said Miss Jules, I want you to take this note to Miss Sarvis for me. Miss Sarvis? Asked Calvin. Yes, Miss Sarvis, said Miss Jules. You know where she is, don't you? Yes, said Calvin. She's on the 19th story. That's right, Calvin, said Miss Jules. Take it to her. Calvin didn't move. Well, what are you waiting for? Asked Miss Calvin. She's on the 19th story, asked Calvin. Yes, we already established that fact, said Miss Jules. The 19th story, Calvin repeated. Yes, Calvin, the 19th story, said Miss Jules. Now, take it to her before I lose my patience. But Miss Jules, said Calvin. Now, Calvin, said Miss Jules, unless you would rather go home on the kindergarten bus. Yes, ma'am, said Calvin. Slowly he walked out of the door. Ha, 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 laughed Terence. Take it to the 19th story. Give it to Miss Sarves, hooted Myron. Have fun on the 19th story, called Jason. Calvin stood at the door to the classroom. He didn't know where to go. As you know, when the builder built Wayside School, he accidentally built it sideways. But he also forgot to build the 19th story. He built the 18th and the 20th, but no 19th. He said he was very sorry, but there was also no Miss Sarves. Miss Sarves taught the 19th story. There was no Miss Sarves. This is weird. And besides that, as if Calvin didn't have enough problems, there would be no notes. Miss Jules had never given Calvin the note. Boy, this is just great, thought Calvin. Just great. I'm supposed to take a note that I don't have a teacher who doesn't exist, and who teaches on a story that was never built. He didn't know what to do. He walked down the 18th story, then back up the 20th, then back down the 18th, and back up the 20th. There was no 19th story. There was never a 19th story, and there will never be a 19th story. Calvin walked down the administration office. He decided to put the note on Miss Sarva's mailbox. But there was one of those either. That didn't bother Calvin too much, however, since he didn't have a note. He looked out the window and saw Louis, the art teacher, shooting baskets. Louis will know what to do, he thought. Calvin went outside. Hey, Louis, Calvin called. Hi, Calvin, said Louis. He tossed him the basketball. Calvin dribbled up and took a shot. He missed. Lou tipped it in. Do you want to play a game? Louis asked. I don't have time, said Calvin. I have to deliver a note to Miss Zarves on the 19th story. Then what are you doing all the way down here? Louis asked. There's no 19th story, said Calvin. Then where is Miss Zarves? Asked Louis. There's no Miss Zarves, asked Calvin. What are you going to do with the note? He asked Louis. There's no note, said Calvin. I understand, said Louis. That's good, said Calvin. But because I sure don't. It's very simple, said Louis. You're not supposed to take no notes to no teachers. You already haven't done it. Calvin still didn't understand. I'll just have to tell Miss Jules that I couldn't deliver the note, he said. That's good, said Louis. The truth is always best. Besides, I don't think I understand what I said either. Calvin walked up 30 flights of stairs to Miss Jules' class. Thank you very much, Calvin, said Miss Jules. Calvin said, Miss Jules interrupted him. That was a very important note, and I'm glad I was able to count on you. Yes, but you see, said Calvin. You delivered the note to Miss Zarves on the 19th story, asked Jason. How did you do it? What do you mean? How did he do it? Asked Miss Jules. He gave Miss Zarves the note. Some people, Jason, are responsible. But you see, Miss Jules, said Calvin. The note was very important, said Miss Jules. I told Miss Zarves to not meet me for lunch. Don't worry, said Calvin. She won't. Good, said Miss Jules. I have a coffee can full of Tootsie Pop roll on my desk. You may help yourself to one for being such a good messenger. Thanks, said Calvin, but really, it was nothing. I think there we finished 3 chapters. That was really interesting, and we get to meet some of our funny characters like BB, Jason, Calvin, those kind of people. And also, we met a lot more people on all the chapters. So comment down below and tell us, are you more of BB, Calvin, or any other person? Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.